I have a question for you this morning. What is a mosaic? Anybody have any idea of what that is? No? Well, I hear whispering, but I don't hear anybody brave enough to say, I know what it is. Just shoot an answer. I have a definition, but go. So. Okay. Okay, good. Good. Anybody have a different definition? Or the same, but in different wording? I think Moses, did you raise your hand or something? I was thinking that. I was thinking that. But I said I should probably do some research to see if it's related somehow, but I didn't have, it came to me too late, let's just say. But for those of you who may want a definition, and what Bonnie and John were saying is absolutely correct. It is a picture or pattern produced by arranging together small colored pieces of hard material, such as stone, tile, or glass. And of course, I have a picture of that. That's what it looks like. You see all the tiny little pieces that are yellow, the pink ones, the blue ones, the orange ones, and they all come together to make this picture, in this case, of a sun. So here's a mosaic of Mark that is from the 1600s. And this one was actually stolen, and somebody recently returned it. So I figured, hey, I'm going to use this one as an illustration. There's also some modern type of mosaics, now that we have pictures. And here's an example of it. You see an elephant, but it's actually composed of small pictures of different things, like a bird. I mean, I don't know if you get to see the little details from where you are, but I can tell you that I see a couple children, a bird, some pumpkins, some flowers, some leaves, and all of that together is making this picture of an elephant, which I find so fascinating and so cool. Here's another one. This one is the world. And it's made up of different wonders of the world. So in the little piece, this is actually a puzzle, which I love puzzles, and it would be kind of cool and excruciating to put together this puzzle. Probably take weeks. But I see like pyramids and water and houses and tigers and all kinds of things that make up the world. And then this final one is a couple. And actually, the pictures are of them. So they took a bunch of pictures of them doing different activities, different things, and they were able to put it together and create this picture of themselves. So I don't know what I have next. Oh, okay. All right, so we'll leave it at that. So what's so fascinating about a mosaic is that you just grab these little pieces that hold their own on their own. Individually, they hold their own. But if you put them all together, they can also make this greater picture, the big focus, the thing that everybody focuses on. So when you have this type of thing, you're no longer focusing on the little details and the little things that make it the big picture, but you're looking at the big picture as a whole. And in a way, that's kind of how the church is. You may have walked into this church this morning thinking that you were just walking into a church and you were just going to be part of the audience, just kind of an spectator. Or you may have walked into this church thinking, well, there's not much that I can contribute, so I'm just going to sit here. But in reality, all of us, the moment that we walked into this church, we became the mosaic of Damascus Grace Fellowship. So from where you are sitting right now, you are actually a part of this church. Whether your role is big or whether your role is small, that's just the reality of where we are right now. And if you ever had any doubt of your contribution or how much you can contribute to the big picture of the church, I want to tell you that doubt that no more. You are important, you are special, we need you. The church needs you. And so to illustrate that point, we're going to take a lesson from one of Paul's books, and it's found in 1 Corinthians 12. And Paul illustrates this concept that I'm trying to share this morning brilliantly with a metaphor of the body. Instead of using the metaphor of the mosaic, he's using the metaphor of the body, and it works perfectly. And I just wanted to share that with you this morning. And so our passage is found in 1 Corinthians 12. And before we begin reading the scripture, I just wanted to give you a little short background on what it is that we're reading. So the scholars believe that this passage of the letter of Paul, what Paul writes are letters. And right now it's a Bible to us, but in the time that it was written, it was a letter that he wrote to churches, and they would read it out loud so everybody could hear it. A lot of times, these letters came because people were asking questions. And such is the case in this one, at least this section of the letter. Most likely, scholars believe that the church of the Corinthians was asking a question of Paul. We don't know exactly what the question is because the letter was lost. But it seems to be in response to something. And how do we know this? Well, the beginning of 1 Corinthians 12 says, now concerning. And that little phrase, now concerning, means that he's responding to something that was asked of him. And in this case, given the topic of what he is speaking of, scholars also believe that most likely the issue was that some people who were members of the church had, for lack of a better word, flashy gifts, meaning speakers or things that you could see, things that were more flashy, more visual. And so the people who were doing these things, and other people in the congregation as well, began to believe that those people were more important than the people who were doing the quote-unquote smaller tasks. And so when Paul is finding this out, he says, absolutely no. And let me show you why, and let me tell you why. That's just not how it works in the kingdom of God. And so he gives them this brilliant explanation, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at how things work in the kingdom of God. And so we're going to start reading on verse 4, and I'm going to read the whole section that we're going to be focusing in today, and then I will be illustrating some points off of it. Just so that, because like a lot of times when I preach, I like to go section by section, but this time I feel like you really need the whole thing in order to appreciate what he's saying. So let's read. Read along with me. It says, now there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are a variety of services, but one same Lord. There are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in every one. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. To one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge according to the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit. To another gifts of healing by the same Spirit. To another the working of miracles. To another prophecy. To another the discernment of spirits. To another various kinds of tongues. To another the interpretation of tongues. All these are activated by one and the same Spirit, he says again, who allots to each one individually just as the Spirit chooses. For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. For in the one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, Jews or Greeks, slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of the one Spirit. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot would say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear would say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members of the body, each one of them, as he chose. If we were all a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many members, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And those members of the body that we think less honorable, we clothe with greater honor, and our less respectable members are treated with greater respect, whereas our more respectable members do not need this. But God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior member, that there may be no dissension within the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. Isn't that amazing? It's just, sometimes the Bible really, you don't really need to explain. It's all so self-explanatory, but I'm still going to point out a few things to you. That there's so many different ways that one can speak of this, but the ones that I have chosen are just one way of going about it. So the first thing that I want to point out from this reading was at the very beginning, and it is that that we are all able to do things, and we're all able to be like the most valuable members of the church, of the body, and therefore the church, because it is God who equips us. And that is so important. God it is who equips us. And that is important primarily for two reasons. One reason is because it keeps us humble. Whenever somebody thinks that it is them that are doing all these things, that I'm a great preacher because I'm doing it, or I'm a great singer because I am doing it, I'm a great evangelist because I am doing it, it's good to remind ourselves that no, it's not you. It's actually God working through you. And we've seen so many times the rise and fall of so many great leaders in the church, preachers, singers, evangelists. We've seen them all rise up and then fall right back down because they lost the focus of who it is that was powering them up. They thought it was them. They thought it was within themselves. And they forgot that it was actually God who was giving them that gift, that spirit. And so it helps to keep us humble and to know who the true source of success is. And the second point, the second reason why, is kind of on the other hand. A lot of times we may come to church, or we may be part of a church, and we may feel like, I don't have anything to contribute. I mean, look at me. I barely went to school. Or look at me. I don't have any time. My time is so saturated. I can't do anything. I'm tired. I don't have time to go to church and do this or that. And a lot of times we just sit ourselves down. We put ourselves out of commission because we feel like we have nothing to contribute. But when we remember who it is that equips us, when we remember that it's not about what we can do, but what God can do through us, that's when we get a new perspective on our value. So it's not what I can do, but it's what God can do. And I remember a sermon once, and it's just, you hear many sermons. I mean, I go to church every week. I hear many, many sermons. But sometimes something sticks in your mind. And this woman was preaching a sermon, and she was not a preacher. But she said, I've preached before. And I preached my sermon, and then by the end of it, I thought it was okay, or I thought I didn't say anything special. But then I had these people come to me and say, wow, that sermon really blessed me. Wow, the things that you said were really applying to me today. And she was like, I don't even remember, I didn't even think I was saying those things. I don't even know how those people understood that. And she brought up the point that sometimes God can get in the middle of us and the other person and minister to people in that way. And I have certainly experienced that myself. A few times that I preached and I said, well, that sermon was really bad. Or, oh my, I was a bore. And then people have come to me and said, wow, I was blessed by this one thing. And that's immediately when I know that was not me, because I was not feeling it. I had a bad week and I couldn't prepare properly, or I know that it wasn't me, but it was God working through me. And so it's really important for us to remember who the source of the power, who the source of our gifts is. Not to think that what our abilities that we have are all we have, but God can use that and even multiply it and create and just do some amazing things with people who typically wouldn't think that they could do it. And to illustrate that point a little bit further, I'm going to actually ask for a little bit of help. I need 5 people to help me read a couple passages. I would like to have somebody read Jeremiah 1:6, if you can raise your hand. Thank you, Gideon. Judges 6:14 through 15. Volunteer or I will volunteer you. Yes, okay, thank you. Judges 6:14 through 15. I need somebody else to do Amos 1:1. Patty, and I'll give you, John, the next one in Jonah 1:11. What did I write here? Jonah 1:11, and I'm sorry, 1 to 11. I'm sorry, 1 to 3. 1, 2, and 3. I wrote the wrong thing here. I'm like, but now I remember what it was. Jonah 1, 2, and 3. That was confusing. Acts, and then another person to do Acts 4:13. Okay, thank you, Evelyn. Acts 4:13. So what are we reading? Let me make a small explanation before. There's something really fascinating about the Bible and about biblical characters is that a lot of times the people who went on to do amazing things were people that were not in that path to success. You know, there are people who are born and they're children and they grow up and they're like, you know, it's like everything works out and they're amazing and they're perfect and they're like, yeah, that's going to be a preacher. But these people that God chose were not those kind of people. And you'll see now as we're reading it. Not only that, but a lot of these people also had another thing. They were aware of who they were and they resisted. And this time I'm not bringing up Moses because we've been speaking about Moses for a few weeks. But Moses was another one of those. But I just wanted to bring out a few other examples. So let's start out with Jeremiah, who was an amazing prophet. But let's see how he started out. Jeremiah 1:6. And Gideon had it.
Allah sovereign Lord, I say, I do not know how to speak. I am too young.
Thank you. Too young. Jeremiah. Judges 6:14 through 15. Who had it? Oh.
Then the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you? So he said to him, O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house.
Thank you. Unknown family. Amos 1:1. Patty?
The words of Amos, one of the shepherds of Tekoa, the vision he saw concerning Israel 2 years before the earthquake.
Thank
Uzziah was king of Judah, and Jeroboam was son of Joash, who was king of Israel.
Thank you. A shepherd. He went on to be another amazing prophet. Jonah 1:1 through 3.
The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord.
He ran away. But then God got him back, and he got him to do amazing things for that city. And then Acts 4:13, this is what was said about the followers of Jesus. I don't remember who had it. Oh, Evelyn.
The members of the council were amazed when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, for they could see that they were ordinary men with no special training in the scriptures. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus.
Thank you. That's the kind of things that people can say when we have been with Jesus. We can do amazing things. And to kind of solidify that point, I want to also read something amazing that Paul said earlier in this epistle of 1 Corinthians 1. 1 Corinthians, I'm sorry. And it's, if you want to follow along with me, it's 1 Corinthians 1, 26 to 31. And this is, believe it. When I'm reading this to you, please believe it. It says, consider your own call, brothers and sisters. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many of you were powerful. Not many of you were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, things that are not, to reduce to nothing things that are, so that no one might boast in the presence of God. He is the source of your life in Christ Jesus, who became for us wisdom from God, and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, in order that what is written, let the one who boasts, boast in the Lord. Amen? I mean, isn't that amazing? God chooses people that to the world may not seem like they're going to be a big deal, and he can do amazing things only by the power of God. The second point that I want to highlight from this passage is that it's from verses 14, around the verses 14 and 15. I mean, the whole thing is kind of mixed around. But the point is, everyone, and I mean everyone, I mean every single one, has an important role to play. I mean, as we see in these verses, it says, indeed the body does not consist of one member, but of many. And then it goes on to give an example. If the foot would say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body. And that's really important. Because if you really think about it, you may think that, okay, this church is just the people who sing. This church is just the people who get up and preach. This church is just the people who teach Sabbath school. This church is just the people who are greeting. And that's not the case. This church is everybody. Every single one who is sitting here is an important part of the body. And without you, we would not be a body. Get that? Without you, we would not be a full functioning body. We may still be kind of a body. I mean, people have been known to survive without a leg, without an arm, without an eye, without certain things. But it's not right. It's not quite right. I mean, you always, if you don't have an arm, you need that arm. If you don't have an eye, you need that eye. And so he's trying to make the point that the body cannot function properly and to its full extent without every single one of you. And I'm sure that many of you have had a situation where you heard something and then you feel like your life stops. And that was the situation for me. I mean, this is really, really clear in my mind 2 Christmases ago. And I think some of you may remember this story live as it was happening. So 2 Christmases ago, I got these Christmas presents, and I was so excited. I mean, when you buy stuff that people are going to like, and you get so excited, and you're like, yes, I can't wait. And I'm especially one that I can't wait. I mean, I try to buy them at the end because I don't want to tell people what I got them, because I know that I get so excited, I can't wait a couple weeks to reveal the special presents that I got for people. So I was so excited. So I was so excited that I bought all this nice wrapping paper, bags, whatever, and I was so excited to wrap them because I sometimes like to wrap presents. So I was getting to do this, and then as I was going home, I hit a curve and I got a flat tire. And I said, okay, that's okay. We can get through this. I'm gonna get through this. I'm still gonna get home and be able to wrap those presents and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that took a while. It killed my spirits a little bit, but not quite entirely. So I was still able to get home, and I said, okay, I lost a few hours, but I still can do this. I can still have these presents ready for Christmas and give them and be so excited and blah, blah, blah. Well, I ended up having to help my mom with something. She wanted me to help her move a table from here to here, and I don't know how this happened, and I don't know why this happened, but it was one of those freak accidents that you hear of. And as I was lifting out this table, my pinky finger got cut up with something that was under the table, and it was bad. I mean, it was excruciating pain, my finger was all swollen. I mean, I think it was a Friday, and I came to church the next day, and I was like, this is what happened. And I remember Lisa was saying, you need to go to the doctor. And I said, no, I'm putting up with it unless I feel like I'm actually dying, then I'll probably go. But it was so bad. Like, I couldn't sleep the whole night. I mean, just one little finger, okay? The whole rest of the body was fine. But the one finger was hurting and excruciating pain. I couldn't sleep the whole night. Now, the second cool thing was that I had just started a new job at ADRA. And when I went back to work on Monday, I was trying to type, and I could not type. I mean, it just messed up I was like, wow, I'm a new employee. I need to show that I'm worthy of this job, but I can't type, I can't use the computer because of this finger. I mean, my feet are fine, my legs are fine, my arms are fine, my eyes, but I cannot do my job because of the one little finger that I never even thought was important, because I figured, well, it's just a finger, who cares? But, so it happens that every part of our body is important, and it's essential that it's working fine for the well-functioning of the entire body. And the final point that I want to make this morning is that there is no contribution, and it's kind of on the same token, there is no contribution that you can make to the church that is too small. I know that there's always a temptation to say that the contributions of people who are more visible are the most important, meaning being up here, singing, preaching. I know that there's a temptation to say that those contributions are the most important, but the reality of the situation is that they are not. Like Paul is illustrating in his passage, every single task that every single person is doing is essential for the body to work properly. And this I learned the hard way, as it seems to happen to me often, learning things the hard way. And that's my next picture for you. My mom may recognize this, and my mom is about to find out something that she doesn't know. So, so this is an oregano dispenser. Basically, you press that little wooden thing, and it dispenses the oregano. So that thing ran out of oregano once. And my mom said, well, Leo, my little brother's not here, so would you mind doing this? Would you mind adding the oregano in the thing? And I said, sure, how hard could it be? And so I grabbed that thing, kind of took it apart, couldn't figure out how to do it, so I had to end up taking the whole thing apart. And it became, you know those movies when somebody's doing something really clumsy and the other person is kind of giving their back, and you're just cracking up because the person is like killing a fish or just doing something really silly behind the other person's back. And that was what it was, because my mom was doing something and I was like trying to figure this thing, and I'm like, I don't know how to put it back together. So somehow I was able to put the oregano in. Somehow I was able to put it back together. Now, when I put it together, I realized that there was one extra piece. And I said, well, it's just an extra piece. I'm just going to throw this thing in the trash. She'll never find out, whatever. What happened, though, is that when I tried to dispense some oregano, the whole thing came out. Why? Well, because that little piece was a little valve that helped to regulate how much oregano would come out of that thing. And so I learned the hard way that you should never underestimate the importance of a little piece. And so that's just what I wanted to illustrate this morning. It may seem like the task that you're currently doing or the task that you are able to do for the church is really small, that nobody notices, that is not important. But it's actually potentially one of the most important tasks of all. Even more important than the big task that you can see. And so this morning, I just wanted to give us a reminder of this. I wanted to give us a reminder to not underestimate yourselves, just to be able to see the full value that you add to this congregation, and instead of dismissing yourself, that you will be more fully a participant of it, because we need you. You're so important, and if nobody has said that to you, and if nobody has thanked you in a while for the service that you're giving our church, I want to say this morning, thank you. And I want to say we need you. And I want to say, continue to provide the services that you're providing to our church. And if you're able to do more, we'll be happy to use you in more ways and just to see what God has in store for you and what God is planning to do through you, because I have seen people do amazing things. And so I'm excited, and I'm just so ready to see all the amazing things that God is able to do through you. And so, because when we sing hymns, sometimes we don't really pay a lot of attention to the lyrics, I want to close with reading the hymn to you. Because I want us to sing this hymn this morning. We're going to close by singing Take My Life and Let It Be, 330. And it has a music that is a little, I don't know. When I was singing it, I don't really pay attention to the lyrics, but that's why I wanted to bring it up to you. Because I want us to sing this hymn this morning as more of a prayer to God on how we want him to use us. And this is what it says. It says, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for thee. Take my voice and let it sing always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages from thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my will and make it thine, it shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is thine own, it shall be thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at thy feet its treasure store. Take myself, and I will be ever only all for thee.